Every once in a while, it's necessary that we confront our faults and decide what we're going to do about them. Are we going to change what we do? Are we going to allow our faults to go on and poison our lives and to poison the lives of those we love and care about and those who are around us? The answer is that if you're going to grow, you are going to have to face these problems, and we are going to have to do something about them. Today, I'm going to call on us all to confront a serious and corrupting human fault. It's of all places, it's right early in the Psalms, the very first verse of the very first Psalm, we are introduced to this great flaw in human nature. It says, "Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. His delight is in the law of God, and his law does he meditate day and night." And the fault I'm talking about is sitting in the seat of the scornful. What does it mean to be scornful? Well, the first thing I want us to be sure we do is to get our words right. Scorn is defined as open or unqualified contempt or disdain, to make someone or something an object of derision or contempt, or to treat someone with contempt or disdain. And it's useful that the Hebrew word means precisely the same thing. The Greek word means the same thing, but it's even a little more literal. It means literally to laugh down, to actually laugh down upon someone. God can do this, but us doing it is another matter entirely. But I want you to understand, there is little or no real humor in this laughter. It's the language of contempt, of assumed superiority, of belittling other people, of the put down, a kind of, really, intimidation, if you see it in its correct light. So with this idea in mind, what we're talking about, I would like for us to do a little bit of a Bible study today, a little self-examination in the light of the Bible. And the place I'd like for you to turn with me to start is Proverbs chapter 3. This particular human flaw, like many others, is explored in great depth in the book of Proverbs, and actually in greater depth than I had really realized. Proverbs, so many times as you read it, you feel like it's just a lot of isolated little verses and quips and things that you can, aphorisms that you can apply to your life. They're very good, very pertinent, and sometimes they can, just one verse alone can cut right to the bone. But what you may not realize is in some cases, there's a reason why that particular aphorism is where it is in that book, and that the person who put all this together, who's King Solomon, we presume, actually went to some trouble to put this whole thing together in a form in which it would touch the heart of a man or a woman and perhaps even change our lives. Proverbs 3 begins by saying, "Withhold not good from them to whom it is due when it's in the power of your hand to do it. Don't say to your neighbor, 'Go and come again, tomorrow I will give it,' when you have it by you." So we're starting off, first of all, we're putting the first foot forward with respect for our neighbor. We don't lie to him. We don't pretend that we don't have it. We tell him the truth. If we've got it, if he needs it, we help him, and we do it right now. Don't devise evil against your neighbor, seeing he dwells securely by you. Once again, respect the people who you work with, your neighbor, the next door neighbor, the guy down the street. Don't devise evil against these people. Don't turn them away. Don't deceive them. Be responsive to them. He says, "Then strive not with a man without cause when he has done you no harm." And how many times, I will never forget the time when this one came home to me like a ton of bricks. When I had gotten off a ferry in Europe, I forget which European city it was a Dutch city, I believe, it might have been Utrecht, and was driving off in my car and got to the gate, and the man there said I had to have a certain pass to get out. Well, I thought I had to have a ticket to get in. I had no idea I had to have a ticket to get out. Well, I really gave this man a terribly hard time. But I thought he was wrong, and I said they took all that from me at the other place, and I raised a lot of Cain with this man. Now, it wasn't his rule. He didn't make it. He was doing what he was told. But finally, I was allowed to go on my way. Later that night, in a hotel, when I hung my jacket up, I put my hand in the pocket, and there was the ticket that I had to have to get out. Made me feel about that big. If I'd known how to find that man, I'd have gone back and apologized to him. But it underlined, and took my mind went straight to this proverb. And I remembered it that night. Don't strive with a man when he has caused you no harm. Don't raise Cain with the waiter. Don't raise Cain with the cashier. Don't raise Cain with people who are following the rules of their employer. If you want to make an issue, go talk to the employer, but don't beat up on people who have not done any harm to you. All these things are of a piece, as he goes down through here to tell us this thing. Don't envy the oppressor, and don't choose any of his ways. Don't do the way those people do. For the froward is an abomination to the Lord, but God's secret is with the righteous. The curse of the Lord is in the house of the wicked. He blesses the habitation of the just. Surely he, that's God, scorns the scorners, but he gives grace to the lowly. Now, if we ever needed anything to make you want to sit up and take notice about your own habits, attitudes, and approaches to the way you treat people, that ought to do it. This is one thing that I don't want to be, is whatever it is that God would consider a scorner, because God himself scorns the scorner. Should be no surprise with that. And notice the way this is done, it draws the contrast. Proverbs does this with little couplets again and again and again. Some of them are parallelism, some of them are inverse parallelism. A parallelism is when you state the same thing twice in similar terms. An inverse parallelism is when you state it and then you state it in the reverse way. And that we do here. Surely he scorns the scorners, but he gives grace to the lowly. What it does is set the lowly, the humble, the person who is small in his own eyes, opposite the scorner, which gives us a little more insight into the character flaw that the Bible speaks of as being scornful or being a scorner. The wise shall inherit glory, but shame shall be the promotion of fools. And you get this linkage between fools, foolishness, scorners, mockers. All this linkage continues all the way through the book of Proverbs, so it's hard really to miss it. Pass down to Proverbs 9 now, if you would. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. She has killed her beast. She has mingled her wine. She has also furnished her table. Now, this is a literary form called personification, where you take an attribute like wisdom, which is abstract, and you make it into a human character. God decides in the book of Proverbs to liken wisdom to a woman. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. She has killed her beast. She mingled her wine. She's also furnished her table. And she sent out her maidens, inviting her guests, and she cries upon the high places of the city. Who is simple? Let him turn in here. For him that wants understanding, she says to him, come, eat of my bread, drink of the wine which I have mingled. Now, one of the things I think it is so important for us to understand is that wisdom is really not that hard to come by. Wisdom is shot all the way through the Bible. Of course, all of us know that we encounter wisdom at every turn in the pages of the Bible. So you want wisdom? Open your Bible. Read your Bible. Read it every day. Sit and think about the Bible. Wisdom is not way off somewhere. You got it right there in your lap. And there's more wisdom than that in the world, in the writings of old men who have lived a long time and had a lot of experience and are willing to tell you about their experiences of life. In the biographies of certain great people, there's wisdom there to learn. It's everywhere. Forsake the foolish and live and go in the way of understanding. In other words, get away from stupid people. And don't tell me you don't know who they are. Don't tell me you can't tell the difference. Don't tell me you don't know who the people are around you who are foolish and the people who are wise. The question is whether or not you are going to choose to be with and to follow and to participate with the foolish, or whether you're going to choose to participate with the wise. It's not because we don't know. We are not that stupid. Then he says this, he that reproves a scorner gets to himself shame, and he that rebukes a wicked man will get a blot. Don't bother reproving a scorner, because if you do, he'll just hate you for it. And boy, can I testify to that. Through my time in the ministry, I've had jobs that required me in administrative structures to reprove people who were out of line, breaking rules, doing something they shouldn't do, committing great wrongs or whatever it may be. And I can tell you categorically that if you reprove a scorner, you will get nothing but hatred in return. And if you ever want to know whether or not a person is wise or whether or not a person is foolish, rebuke him. A person who is wise will listen to what you say. He will think it over. And in the end, if you're right, he will really love you for taking the time to tell him. But of course, if you tell this person, if you yourself are scornful as you rebuke a person, that isn't going to go very far either. But whenever you are kind and you rebuke a person who is wise, a person whose heart is right, will take that rebuke to heart and will love you for it for generations. You know, I was a dean of students in Brickett Wood for many years. And as dean of students, you know you have got to call people on the carpet every so often. It's part of the job. One night, all the students in one wing of the dorm went out on a party. And so the guys in the other wing of the dorm thought it would just be really cute to take down all their bunks while they were gone, move them into another room somewhere else, so that when they came back to the dorm, they would find all their rooms empty and swept and garnished, as it were. Now, guess who got the job of calling that group of wiseacres on the carpet and dealing with the disciplinary problem? I did. And you know something? Over the years, in the process of dealing with students and coming into contact with them years following, I find some students who love me to this day and some who hate me to this day, which says a lot more about them than it does about me. So don't bother reproving a scorner. He'll hate you. But a wise man, he'll love you. Give instruction to a wise man, he'll be yet wiser. Teach a just man, he'll increase in learning. Now, you know, this is self-examination. Think this over. Think about yourself. How do you handle it when you're rebuked? How do you handle it when someone tells you you're wrong? Someone steps right up and says, I don't think you handled that right. Or someone steps up, I think you should rethink this course that you're on. How do you handle it? Are you able to listen? Or do you hate the person? Do you despise the person? Do you resent the person? Very important questions. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. You notice how all this stuff, even though they seem to be almost isolated ideas, they really do relate as you make your way through them. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The knowledge of the holy is understanding. For by me, that's by wisdom, your days shall be multiplied, and the years of your life shall be increased. If you be wise, you shall be wise for yourself. Because you're not doing anybody else any good. You're not doing God any good. You're wise for yourself. And if you scorn, you alone will bear it. Now, I believe that's true. But at the same time, I also believe that a lot of times our scorning and our wisdom does have impact on other people in our lives, especially when we're married and our things that we do affect our wives, our children, our families. But I'll take him at his word. If I'm wise, I'll do myself good. If I scorn, I'm going to bear it. Proverbs 13. A wise son hears his father's instruction, but a scorner will not listen to rebuke. Now, I can think back many, many years ago to the rare occasions when my father had to call me down for something, and he did from time to time. And I will tell you that my dad was not always right. He really wasn't. But the important thing for me looking back on it is, it was important for me to listen, it was important for me to hear it and weigh it, because his instruction was, in most cases, valid, it was important, his experience in life was greater than mine, and if I had listened more carefully, I probably could have avoided some pain in my life. A wise son hears his father's instructions. A scorner doesn't listen to rebuke. Just won't hear it. A man shall eat good by the fruit of his mouth, but the soul of transgressors shall eat violence. He that keeps his mouth keeps his life. He that opens wide his lips is going to have destruction. There's a funny thing, by the way, about the root meaning of this of the word scorn in the Hebrew, that has to do with the putting out or pushing forward of the lips. In other words, it's a mouth thing in Hebrew, as he uses the word scorn. It has to do with the heart, but its expression is with the mouth. And basically, he is still talking about the scorner when he says, he that keeps his mouth keeps his life. He that opens wide his lips is going to have destruction. Passing down now to Proverbs 14. A faithful witness will not lie. A false witness has no problem uttering lies. That should be obvious to anyone. A scorner actually looks for wisdom and never finds it. but knowledge is easy to the person who understands. And this is so true, that knowledge, good knowledge, sound knowledge, right knowledge, actually does come fairly easy if you just apply yourself to it. But a scorner can go out there looking for it, and he gets nowhere. Why do you think that is? Why is it that the scorner can go out there and beat his head against the tree of knowledge and never get anywhere, never understand, never go? The only thing I can say is he thinks he already knows. He already knows more than you do. I was talking to a gentleman not long ago who was so pleased when he first picked up and read the Bible to find that it confirmed what he already believed. And he basically follows his own ideas and uses the Bible to confirm them in his life. But sooner or later, that's going to bite him. Go from the presence of a foolish man when you perceive not in him the lips of knowledge. You know, we really ought to mark that scripture in our Bible. We ought to memorize it and never let it get away from us. Remember what it says. Go from the presence of a foolish man when you perceive not in him the lips of knowledge. You listen for a while. When it comes to the place where you know you're listening to a fool, when you know the knowledge is not there, it's time to go somewhere else. Not only just stop listening, go from his presence and get away from him. These little statements that are tossed in here, these things have stood the test of time. They are the wisdom of the ancients. They are inspired by God to be put in your Bible, and we should take them very seriously. Go from the presence of a foolish man when you perceive not in him the lips of knowledge. I have begun later in life to apply that with much more zeal than I used to when I was younger, and to much greater happiness. The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way. The folly of fools is deceit. Fools make a mock at sin. They think sin is funny. Among the righteous there is favor. The heart knows its own bitterness. A stranger does not intermeddle with his joy. The house of the wicked shall be overthrown, but the tabernacle of the upright, it'll flourish. Then he says this most important thing to know in the light of what we're talking about here, and that is the way of the scornful. There is a way that seems right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Now, I have yet to meet the person. I cannot recall a single person in my life who came to me and said, I know I'm right, and I know I'm wrong, and I'm going to do it anyway. I may be forgetting somebody that I have met, but I don't think I have ever met anybody who says, I know I'm wrong, and I'm going to do it anyway. People who, present an idea to you, they do it because they believe that it's right, which means all those things that you do that you think are right, they may not be. Just because you think they are right, well, with that and 50 cents, you can buy a cup of coffee some places. Your opinion about what's right and wrong isn't worth very much. The question is, what can you apply this to? What can you test your opinion against? That's the thing that is the determination. Even in laughter, the heart is sorrowful, and the end of that mirth is heaviness. And I think I have to go back to the idea of the fools make a mock at sin, and even while they're mocking it, their heart is heavy. And the end of it is heaviness. The backslider in heart shall be filled with his own ways, and a good man shall be satisfied from himself. The simple believes every word, but the prudent man looks well to his going. Now, this is kind of an interesting little statement here, because it locks in with the idea of the scorner in this sense, that so often the scornful person is an intimidator. The scornful person is one who puts other people down. And the simple person, rather than allow themselves to be intimidated, than allow themselves to be laughed at or made to feel small, will simply believe what they are being told. They will go along with it because of the scorn that this person has for an alternative point of view. The simple believes every word, but the prudent man looks well to his going. He stops, thinks, and says, now wait a minute. And again, unless you've got the Bible, unless you have the Word of God, the law of God, and all this revelation from the Bible to fall back on, how do you evaluate? How do you know? How can you judge? A wise man fears and departs from evil. The fool rages, is confident. This is the scorner. A wise man fears and departs from evil, but the fool rages and is confident. He that is soon angry deals foolishly, And the anger that crops up in the scorner, or the person who's engaged in religious argument, is so evident so much of the time. You can talk for a little while, and one of the places I've noticed it particularly is many years gone by, I haven't done it recently, go up on internet forums and go over to some of the major doctrinal religious forums and find an argument or a discussion board on the Trinity. And you will find here people discussing the nature of God in the most bitter, vitriolic, hateful terms with one another that you could possibly imagine a debate to take place in public. It is astonishing to me to see that type of thing take place. But he that is soon angry deals foolishly, and he is also the scorner. The simple inherit folly. The prudent are crowned with knowledge. The evil bow before the good. The wicked are at the gates of the righteous. The poor is despised even of his own nature. But the rich, he's got lots of friends, right? That's the way it goes. But he that despises his neighbor sins. Think about this. The poor is hated by his neighbor, but he that despises his neighbor sins. He that has mercy on the poor, the happy is he. But see, the proud, the haughty, the scorner, this is a person who looks down his nose at the poor. This is a person who has contempt for the poor. The Bible does not allow us with that kind of freedom. Do not they err that devise evil? Mercy and truth shall be to them that devise good. In all labor there is profit. The talk of the lips tends to poverty. And this again has to be connected to what we're going at before and after, that the scornful person is a person who is full of words. He's got a lot of stuff to say and lots of putdowns and lots of clever things to say about people. The crown of the wise is their riches. The foolishness of fools is folly. The true witness, the true and honest witness, delivers souls. A deceitful witness speaks lies. In the fear of the Lord is strong confidence, and his children will have a place of refuge. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, to depart from the snares of death. And you know, the thing about the scorner is, you get the very distinct impression he's not afraid of anybody. There is no fear of God before his eyes. If there were, here would see some humility when he's talking to and about other people. But no, to laugh them down is a part of his life. In the multitude of people is the king's honor, and the want of people is the destruction of the prince. That's a complete sidelight. But the slow decline of the American population is not to our advantage in this country. He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding. He that is hasty of spirit exalts folly. There is a definite connection between the hastiness to be angry and the scornful attitude of people who are going to be scorned in turn by God. A sound heart is the life of the flesh. Envy is a rottenness to the bones. Don't think the subject has been entirely changed. New element has been introduced into it. But envy also is very much intertwined with this attitude of being scornful of other people. He that oppresses the poor reproaches his maker. He that honors him has mercy on the poor. The wicked is driven away in his wickedness. The righteous has hope in his death. Wisdom rests in the heart of him that has understanding, but that which is in the midst of fools, we find out very quickly. Righteousness exalts a nation. Sin is a reproach to any people. The king's favor is toward a wise servant, but his anger is toward him that causes shame. And I'm telling you, this attitude of scorn toward other people, this talking down, this put down, is a shameful thing to do, and it will ultimately bring shame. Chapter 15, verse 1. A soft answer turns away wrath. Grievous words stir up anger. And if you're ever involved in a theological or religious argument with somebody and things start getting a little bit heated, remember this. A soft answer turns away wrath. Grievous words, scornful words, put-downs, clever arguments, the jerk the rug out from under somebody, the clever verbal trap that people who debate like to get involved in. These things just make people angrier. And many times what's needed in these things is simply to let it alone. If somebody can't see it the way you see it, leave them alone. Simple as that. The soft answer turns away wrath. Grievous words stir up anger. The tongue of the wise uses knowledge right. but the mouth of fools pours out foolishness. And you see, this is what we're talking about. When you know something that someone else doesn't know, this is not the time to talk down to people. This is not the time to laugh at them. This is not the time to hold them in derision. The tongue of the wise uses knowledge aright. The mouth of fools, blah, pour it out. Get it out. If it hurts somebody's feelings, don't worry about that. That's his problem. The eyes of the Lord, though, are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life. Perverseness in it is a breach in the spirit. A fool despises his father's instruction. He that regards reproof is very wise. In the house of the righteous is much treasure. All not necessarily money, but things that are much more important than that. The revenue of the wicked, I know what he earns. He earns a lot of trouble. The lips of the wise disperse knowledge. The heart of the foolish doesn't do that. And you know, there is something that I sometimes have referred to, at least in passing. I haven't spent a lot of time on it, but you don't hear me preach a lot. And the reason that you don't hear me preach a lot is because what most people would refer to as preaching almost inevitably involves talking down to the audience. You people need to straighten out. You people are wrong. You people are lower than scum. You know, which I know that may be an overstatement, but it isn't much of an overstatement, is it, compared to some sermons maybe you've heard sometime in the past? Well, to preach in that way is to talk down. And you don't convey knowledge to people. You don't convey understanding when you talk down to people. All you do is generate resentment from people. The lips of the wise disperse knowledge. The heart of the foolish doesn't do that. The sacrifice of the wicked is abomination to the Lord. I mean, the wicked person can come up, the scorner, the guy that's got this holier-than-thou attitude, can come up to the temple of God with a stalled ox and kill that ox to make an offering up there, and God hates every bit of it. But the simple prayer of an upright man, in the Bible, by the way, the word upright, as you see it again, just simply means straight. The simple prayer of a straight man is a delight to God. The way of the wicked, it's an abomination to the Lord, but he that loves God follows after righteousness. Number 10, verse 10. This is another one for you never to forget. Correction is grievous unto him that forsakes the way, and he that hates reproof will die. And again, I've had two major jobs in my lifetime in which I've had cause to learn this lesson very, very clearly and very distinctly. One of them was being dean of students. The other was being supervisor of the ministry of a large church organization. That when time came when you had to give correction to someone who was going astray, and folks, you just got to realize this, there is no group of men, there's no organization of men, there's no college, no church, no whatever it is, in which everybody's going to be perfect and nobody ever needs to be corrected. Sooner or later, everybody needs to have somebody tap him on the shoulder and say, friend, could I talk to you about this? I think you're making a mistake. Sooner or later, everybody has got to face this. Everybody's got to be able to handle it. Those people who are in the process of forsaking the way hate every minute of it. And the way in which I've kind of seen it in the past, and then the most striking examples in my experience have been students in a religious college who were, by hindsight, clearly leaving the way of righteousness and going back into the world, were students that in the process of trying to work with them hated it when you had anything to tell them that was wrong. They gritted their teeth, they resented it, they fought it, and wouldn't respond. And then you had those students. There's one girl who came to see me from time to time, and it was kind of humbling in a way. And she came in, she always wanted to come to me for counseling. And one day she told me, she says, the reason I like to come to you is because I know you will be hard on me. And that really kind of hurt my feelings a little bit, because I didn't really mean to be hard on her, and I don't think that's the way she meant it. I think the way she meant it was that I would really tell her the truth, which I did always try to do with students when they were having problems and struggling with problems. And she was a girl whom I came to respect and love a great deal as a sister in the faith, because her desire, her heart, her hope was to become more like God, to grow, to change, and so consequently she was looking for correction. She was trying to find ways to do things better. She was trying to grow up into Christ. Hell and destruction are before the Lord. Verse 11, how much more then the hearts of the children of men? A scorner does not love one who reproves him, and he just will not go to the wise. Now, this is not a sermon about other people in the church besides you. This is a sermon about you. Are you a person who finds it difficult to love someone who reproves you? And are you a person who finds it difficult to go to the wise to ask for help, for guidance, for instruction, for advice, for ideas? Are you? Or is it easy to go? Is it something you want to do, something you desire? Or do you maybe think you already know all the answers? These are things that are in the book here for us to consider. A scorner will never love someone who reproves him. He will not go to the wise. If he goes once and hears something he doesn't want to hear, he sure won't ever go back. The heart of him that has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feeds on foolishness. All the days of the afflicted are evil, but he that's merry of heart has a continual feast. Love that. Love that passage. It has the happiness of life has so much to do with what's going on in your heart. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a stalled ox and hatred therewith. And it's so true. I would so much rather just have a dinner of herbs where love is and with friends than to be at some kind of a banquet where people are bickering and arguing and maybe especially some big theological discussion about a doctrinal issue. I'd just as soon have a vegetarian dinner with a group of friends that we just really like to be together and talk. A wrathful man that's angry a lot, stirs up trouble. But he that is slow to anger appeases strife. These things are very related to what I'm talking about. Because anger lies right at the root. There is a kind of deep, buried anger inside of the scornful person. Sure, he tends to be arrogant. Sure, he tends to be proud. Sure, this person tends to be looking down their nose at other people. But right down inside of all that is also anger. And along with the anger is fear. There is a very large dollop of fear in there with it. Because they are afraid of what they don't know. They are afraid, they are scared to death that what they have invested so much of themselves and so much of their lives in might somehow turn out to be wrong. And so they will defend it, often with anger, often foolishly, often blindly, until finally the anger becomes such that they either have to go away before they hurt somebody. The way of a slothful man is a hedge of thorns. The way of the righteous, it's easy going. A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish man despises his mother. And so on these go. There is so much in here that I could take the time. I won't be able to do all of them, but these things, they're even the remainder of this all the way down through verse 33 of this chapter is all still in theme. It's all still in this discussion, this analysis of the kind of person we are, of the way we treat people, the way we respond to people, what our heart is like, whether we are angry, whether we are calm, whether we are understanding, whether we are foolish, whether we will listen to someone who's trying to tell us, or whether we will hate them because they make us uncomfortable because they tell us that we might be wrong about something. And looking back over my life, the people who have done me the most good have been the people who cared enough to come and tell me when they thought I was wrong. They weren't always right, but they did care. And they are the people who have done me a lot of good in my life. Chapter 19, verse 25. Smite a scorner, and the simple will beware. And see, these simple people that listen to every word, ever follow every word, they are going to tend to follow. But so it says, go ahead and hit him. Sometimes you have to smite a scorner, and the simple then will back off. And reprove one that has understanding, hey, and he will understand knowledge. He that wastes his father and chases away his mother is a son that causes shame and brings reproach. Cease, my son, to hear the instruction that causes to err from the words of knowledge. There comes a point in time where you got to make a decision to stop listening to some stuff. When you're already beginning to see that it's foolish, you're already seeing it's going down the wrong path, there's a time to walk away from it. An ungodly witness scorns judgment, and the mouth of the wicked devours iniquity. Judgments are prepared for scorners, and stripes for the back of fools. Do you fear God? Does God worry you at all? Do you have any concern? Here's what God says: judgments are prepared for scorners, and stripes for the back of fools. So it's not a bad idea if you do a little introspection and look for the scorner in yourself and decide what you're going to do about that. Whether you're going to continue down that road to destruction or whether you're going to turn it around. Chapter 21. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord like the rivers of water. He turns it wherever he wants it to go. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes. And this is something which, in years gone by, I have had to reponder again and again and again. Because I don't go through life thinking I'm wrong. I don't start out a day thinking I'm on the wrong path. I don't make decisions as the day goes on because I think they're wrong. Every decision I make in the course of a day, I'm reasonably sure is the right decision that I make. And I go through life believing that I'm right at every step, at every turn of the road, but that belief that I'm right does not make it so. Which means that each of us has got to be very careful to be open to reproof, to be open to correction, to be open to someone who tells us, on this occasion, we're full of it again. The truth is that there are times we have to be told, and if we are not open to being told, we won't be told. And we'll go right down on the road to destruction thinking that we are right every step of the way. To do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. You just get it again and again in the Bible. God really is not that impressed with sacrifice. Blood of animals, smoke going up out of the temple, all that's fine as far as it goes. But what really means something to him is justice, judgment, and the way we treat one another. Far more acceptable to him. A high look, a proud heart, and the plowing of the wicked is sin. And these things are part and parcel with a scornful spirit. The thoughts of the diligent tend only to plenteous, but of every one that is hasty, it tends only to want. The getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a vanity tossed to and fro of those that looking for death. The robbery of the wicked shall destroy them because they refuse to do judgment. Verse 9, it's better to dwell in the corner of a housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. And you know something? I hadn't thought about this in a way. But what this is really talking about is the scornful attitude of a woman or a man, either one, doesn't have to be a one-way street, toward the person they're living their life with. There is no place for scorn, for humiliation, for talking down, for the put down, for the reproof, for the rebuke in a family and in a home, for laughing at a person or laughing down, to use the Greek word. There is just no place for it. He said it's better to dwell in the corner of a housetop than to live in a wide house with a woman or a man that does that to you. The soul of the wicked desires evil. His neighbor finds no favor in his eyes. Now, this repeated theme, and I want you to think about this. It has to do with the way you look at your neighbor. He doesn't find any favor in your eyes. You don't respect your neighbor. You don't love your neighbor as yourself. You're not kind to your neighbor. You're not considerate of your neighbor. All these things are the antithesis of the scorner who couldn't care less about his neighbor. When the scorner is punished, the simple is made wise, and the wise is instructed, he receives knowledge. Verse 19. It's better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and an angry woman. Again, better be off in the desert somewhere than to suffer the continual putdowns of a mate, husband or wife. Now, in Solomon's case, he had 1,000 of these he had to deal with. And that was just, a little bit too much for him, I guess. But the point, and so he uses women as the example. But the truth is, it goes both ways. It cuts one way just as bad as it does the other. And it's a whole lot better to be off somewhere by yourself than to have to endure the continual put-downs, the continual laugh-ats, the continual derision, or whatever it is that you get from this person that you're living with. There is treasure to be desired in oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man just spends it all up. He that follows after righteousness and mercy finds life, righteousness, and honor. A wise man scales the city of the mighty and casts down the strength of the confidence thereof. Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps his soul from troubles. And listen to this. Proud and haughty scorner is his name, who deals in proud wrath. That's it, boys and girls. Proud wrath. Something that we really need to be far away from, as far as we can possibly get. There is so much here. So much here. Chapter 29, verse 1, he that being often reproved hardens his neck shall in the end be suddenly destroyed, and that without remedy. That to me is a really frightening scripture. I've thought about it so many times in my life, that the reproof from God that comes again and again and again, in many different ways in our life, that if we continue to harden our neck against it, there comes a point in time where you pass the point of no return, and you can't come back. If you harden yourself again and again and again against the correction of God, sooner or later there is destruction and no remedy for the destruction. The haughty scorner, the person who is, when reproved, hardens his neck, I know better than you do, the person who will not listen to reproof is on his way to hell in the sense of destruction. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. When the big wicked bear rule, the people mourn. I want to slip over to Isaiah just now for just one scripture. In Isaiah 29 and verse 17, is it not yet a very little while, and Lebanon shall be turned into a fruitful field? And the fruitful field, boy, that'll be turned into a forest. In that day the deaf shall hear the words out of the book, and the eyes of the blind out of obscurity and out of darkness. Isaiah 29, verse 19. The meek also shall increase their joy in the Lord. And the person who is meek is the antithesis of the proud and haughty scorner. They'll increase their joy in the Lord, and the poor among men shall rejoice in the Holy One of Israel. For the terrible one is brought to naught, and the scorner is consumed, and all they that watch for iniquity are cut off. And listen to this. It's talking about the scorner and those who fall in this category that they are going to be cut off. They are the people who make a man an offender for a word. They are the people who lay a snare for him that reproves in the gates, and will turn aside the just for a thing of nothing. They are nitpickers, debaters, arguers, bickerers, and they will sell you down the river because you get one word wrong in whatever it is you're talking about. But I want to take you back to the book of Proverbs for a closing idea. Proverbs 22 this time, in verse 10 and 11, combination 2 verses only. Listen carefully. Cast out the scorner, and contention will go out. Yea, strife and reproach will cease. He that loves pureness of heart, for the grace of his lips, the king shall be his friend. There is much pleading these days for unity in the church. We want an end to the endless divisions and splits that plague the Christian faith, right? Here's your answer. You put your finger on it right there in the Bible, Proverbs 22, verse 10. Cast out the scorner, and contention will go out like a fire that no longer has any fuel. It'll just go out. It's gone. Gather the lynch mob. Let's find that scorner, and let's get him out of this church so we can have some peace, so we can be pure, and so we can grow. But what if that scorner is you? What if it's you that the lynch mob is after? And how do you cast out the scorner when everybody's guilty in some manner or degree? How do you do that? Would there be any church left if we got rid of all the scorners in the church? Which of us can point to another one and say, ha, here's the scorner, get rid of him, write him out of town on a rail, tar him and feather him, get him out of here? I'll tell you, for too long, the Christian faith has looked for unity by excluding people we don't like. And that's what we're talking about if we're going to go getting rid of the scorner out of our midst. Look at that passage again. I want you to think very carefully about what he says. Cast out the scorner, and contention will go out. Yea, strife and reproach shall cease. The next verse is still related. Don't forget this. It hasn't gone off somewhere else. He says, he that loves pureness of heart, describing a person, for the grace of his lips, the king will be his friend. In other words, you got the scorner over here who's a real pain in the neck. But then you've got a guy whose great value is pureness of heart. And he is very careful to be gracious in the way he treats people, the way he talks to people, the way he talks about people, the way he handles their arguments, the way he answers their questions, the way he works with people. He is gracious in all of these things. Even the king will be his friend. Because you see, people like that are kind of hard to come by. Scorn is a matter of the heart. And it's contrasted here with grace of the lips. What we really need to do is to cast out the scorn inside, because that's where strife and reproach originate. To cast out the scorn inside of each of us. That's what needs to go. Cast that out, and strife and contention will go out, because there is no fuel for them. Even in the New Testament, Paul wrote to the Colossians, and he said this, just one short verse: "Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how to answer every man." That our answers, our discussions, will always be gracious to everyone. It is the scorn inside that needs to be cast out. Once upon a time, there was a man who found a place where scorn could not live. I don't know what happened in his life. I don't know what brought him to the place he came to in his life. But this man had a true moment, an honest moment, at the feet of the crucified Christ. He was so moved, he wrote the words to one of the greatest hymns of all time. How could anyone scorn such a man or belittle his experience? His name was Isaac Watts, and these are the words of a hymn that he wrote. "When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour contempt on all my pride. Forbid it, Lord, that I should boast, save in the death of Christ my God. All the vain things that charm me most, I sacrifice them to his blood. See, from his head, his hands, his feet, sorrow and love flow mingled down. Did e'er such love and sorrow meet, or thorns compose so rich a crown? Were the whole realm of nature mine, that were present far too small. Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all." No scorn there.